and I reached out to her a few weeks back and said, look, we're kicking off this initiative in Sacramento, and I couldn't think of a better person to represent the President and the Secretary of Education, Russlynn Ali. And without missing a beat, she said, I'll be there. So she flew all the way out just to be with us today. So thank you for your kind words. Another round of applause. Okay, now we're all here because of these kids behind us. Now, they have sat here quietly and paid attention. They haven't fallen asleep. Do y'all need to stand up for a second? Just stand up for a second. I want to, my remarks aren't going to be too long, but I want to first just thank the educators in the room. I mean, I'm looking around, and I know there's a lot of teachers. If you're a teacher in here, raise your hand. Let's give our teachers a round of applause. I know we have principals, educators, and superintendents. Raise your hand. Let's give them a round of applause. And I know we have school board members here and folks that are involved in education in some other way. School board members, raise your hand. Department of Ed, raise your hand. So, what I want to do today is thank you folks for coming out, but this is just the beginning. And we kicked this initiative off on February 28th because it's the end of Black History Month. And we did that very intentionally, and I'll talk about that a little later. But you hear a lot of us talking about civil rights, and education is a civil rights issue of our time. We say that all over. Are we actually really living that? Are we really willing to fight for the degree of things that we think are important, like they did in the 50s and 60s? I don't have the answer, but literally, that's really a question that we need to ask ourselves before we leave here today. Are we really willing to fight for the things that we think are important for our children? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of a pit school. So, not the University of Pittsburgh. A pit school is this, and I think it gives a context for my remarks. Back in the days of slavery, mid-1800s, African Americans could not congregate together legally unless it was at church or in the fields. We couldn't come together and congregate. So churches became our places that we talked about our politics, we talked about our social issues, we talked about picnics, we talked about our religion, we talked about the work we were doing out there. Churches were the places that we could congregate. But we were not allowed to read or to be educated. So what these folks did in the 1800s is late at night, when the plantation owners went to sleep, late at night, they went out back and they dug a hole in the ground, about 12 feet deep. And they would take a candle to the bottom of that pit, and they would take a Bible, and they would take one of their young people, one of the young kids, down to the bottom of that pit. And then somebody would cover up the top with a leaf. And they would teach their children how to read by using a Bible. Amen. Think about that for a second. Our question is, if those folks got caught, they would have risked losing a family member, their lives, a limb, being separated. The risk they were willing to go to make sure kids were learning. Are we doing our part today? I mean, are we? She said no. This is what has to wake us up, Sacramento. We've got to be able to risk it all to make sure our kids are getting high quality education. We have to do that. So get ready. I'm going to be talking about education for as long as I'm there till they bury me. Because I missed back on March 5th in 2008, I announced that I was running for mayor on this stage here with a lot of you in the room. And the whole reason why I ran for mayor is because I wanted to make a difference in our school system for our kids. Now, I don't have a direct line as a mayor. There's nothing I can do directly. But we can talk about it, and we can take advantage of this bully pulpit. And we can make Sacramento a model city. And what is our goal? We want to be a city known for great public schools. We want Sacramento to be known that every child in our community has access to really good schools. And if we do that, then Russlynn Ali and other people back in Washington, they'll be pointing to what we're doing in Sacramento. But we have a long ways to go. So today, I want to, on the first hand, celebrate what we've done. And that's why we acknowledge all of you folks in here for the work you're doing. But on the same token, we want to acknowledge some of the brutal facts. And we want to talk about how far we have to go. And if we do that, then we can look back on this day a few years from now and be really proud about what took place here in Sacramento. So I'm going to be talking about education over and over and over again. I've never seen the outrage that I think we should be seeing in our community. When you think about this, I have a few data points, and I was trying to go back and forth on what were the few I wanted to bring forward. So let me give you a couple of them, of a few data points. In Sacramento, we have 119 schools. We have 117,000 kids that make up our schools in Sacramento. We have 5 school districts. Did you guys know? Raise your hand if you knew we had 5 school districts. So about half the room. We have 5 school districts that make up our city. I'm here to tell you today that the majority of our schools are not meeting the academic targets for California. A lot of you did not know that. The majority of our schools are not meeting the targets for California. Data point number 2. This is the one that I'm going to harp on and harp on and harp on. 3rd grade. Only 39% of our kids in our community are reading at grade level. 39%. That means 61% aren't reading at grade level. 39% of our kids are reading at grade level. Do you know that the children in school today are going to be the first generation of kids that will be less educated than their parents? She said yes. Got some smart kids out there. So think about this for a moment. 3rd grade. 80% of our 3rd graders who are behind never catch up. 80% of the kids who are behind never catch up.